Okay, imagine for a second that you are holding a single apple in your hand.
Hmm.
You feel its weight. You put it on the table. You are absolutely 100% certain there's one apple there.
Right.
Now imagine someone walks up, grabs a napkin, and writes down a mathematical proof. It's strictly logical, follows every single rule that proves irrefutably that your one apple is actually two apples.
And we aren't talking about a magic trick here, not a sleight of hand. We are talking about a fundamental truth that just breaks the universe.
Exactly. If that math is correct, your senses are lying to you. Reality itself is lying.
Yeah.
So today, we are looking at a story that asks a pretty terrifying question. What happens when the absolute truths we build our lives on, whether that's logic or love, suddenly just stop making sense?
It is a heavy premise, but wow, a fascinating one. We are doing a deep dive into Division by Zero, a short story by Ted Chiang.
And if you know Chiang, you know he's the guy who wrote the story that became the movie Arrival.
He deals in these big brain-breaking ideas.
Huge ideas.
Yeah.
And what makes this one so gripping is that it isn't just a lecture on math. It alternates between two very different worlds.
Right.
On one side, you have a history of mathematical theory, which is surprisingly dramatic, like soap opera dramatic.
He really is.
And on the other, you have the quiet, painful disintegration of a marriage.
And our mission today is to see how those two things are actually the same thing. Chiang is drawing this incredible parallel between the collapse of a mathematical system and the collapse of empathy in a relationship.
So let's start with the what. The title is Division by Zero. I think most of us learned in school that you can't do that.
It's the first commandment of algebra class.
Right. Thou shalt not divide by zero. But I'll be honest, I usually just accepted the rule without asking why. Why is it such a catastrophe?
Well, it comes down to how we define operations. Division isn't its own magic thing. It's just the inverse of multiplication.
Okay.
If I say 6 divided by 2 equals 3, what I'm really saying is there is a number, 3, that when multiplied by 2 gets me back to 6.
Okay, that tracks. Simple reverse engineering.
Exactly. Now try with 0. If you say 5 divided by 0 equals something, you're claiming there's a number that when you multiply it by 0 gets you back to 5.
But anything multiplied by zero is zero.
Precisely. You can never get back to 5. The bridge is out. There is no number that satisfies that relationship.
So that's why we say it's undefined.
Yeah, it's not just an arbitrary rule teachers made up to be annoying. It represents a logical void, a dead end.
It's worse than a dead end. It's a contradiction.
Yes.
Now, the story brings up this classic party trick proof. I've seen this online, usually in forums trying to troll people.
Oh, yeah, the classic. Gotcha.
You start with A equals 1 and B equals 1, and you do a bunch of algebraic gymnastics, and suddenly you prove that 1 equals 2.
Right. And usually if you look closely at line 4 or 5, you'll see the person divided by A minus B.
Since A and B are both 1, that's 0.
That's 0. They snuck in a division by 0. That one illegal move makes the whole proof garbage. It's a trick.
But this is where Chiang twists the knife. The protagonist, Renee, isn't doing a party trick. She is a mathematician of the highest order. The text compares her intellect to von Neumann.
Who's basically a human computer. She isn't trying to fool anyone.
No. Renee is working on a new formalism, essentially a new way to look at geometry and number theory. And inside this perfectly valid system, she derives a proof that 1 equals 2.
And to be clear, she checks her work. She doesn't just write it down on a napkin and walk away.
No, she goes over it obsessively, again and again.
She doesn't divide by 0. She doesn't use undefined terms. She follows every single rule of the system she built. And the logic holds.
She proves, legitimately, that 1 equals 2.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for a non-mathematician, someone like me, to really grasp why this is suicide-worthy scary. If I found out 1 equals 2, I'd probably just think, that's weird, and go eat lunch.
Right. But it's because if 1 equals 2, mathematics effectively ceases to exist. Think about it. If 1 equals 2, I can subtract 1 from both sides, and now 0 equals 1. And once I have that, I can multiply both sides by any number. I can prove 5 equals 100. I can prove the sky is green.
You can prove anything.
You can prove you are the president of the United States. It's that idea of ex falso quod libet from a contradiction, anything follows.
So math is supposed to be this language that describes reality with absolute precision.
And if it contains a contradiction at its core, it describes nothing. It becomes meaningless noise. Renee realizes She spent her life studying a language that doesn't actually have any words.
That is terrifying. It's like discovering that gravity is just a suggestion.
And that leads to the opening scene of the story, which is just brutal. We meet Renee, not in a classroom, but in a psychiatric ward. She has attempted suicide.
It's a physical reaction to an intellectual crisis. The text gives us this flashback to her as a kid, like 7 years old.
Yeah.
She's looking at tiles on a floor, perfect squares. She sees how they fit together, 3 by 3, 4 by 4. She feels this shivering precision.
That phrase, shivering precision, is so evocative. She calls it the theological side of math. She doesn't believe in God, but she believes in that order, that structure.
Right. So when she proves 1 equals 2, she hasn't just found a typo. She has looked into the face of God and found a vacuum. She calls it theological atheism.
She knows for a fact that the divinity of logic is a lie.
And this isn't just her being dramatic. The story does a really good job showing that this quest for certainty has been driving people crazy for a century.
No, it's been a panic room for over 100 years. The text references the early 20th century as a crisis point. You had these brilliant minds like Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead.
They were terrified of contradictions.
Terrified. They wanted to prove once and for all that math was solid.
They wrote Principia Mathematica, right? Which sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, but it's actually this massive 3-volume book on logic.
A massive, incredibly dense work. And the story drops this incredible fact. It took them 362 pages of dense symbolic logic just to prove that 1 + 1 = 2.
362 pages. That sounds less like math and more like desperation.
It was an attempt to build a foundation that couldn't crack. They wanted to be absolutely 100% sure.
Then you have David Hilbert in 1900.
Right. He famously challenged the world to prove that arithmetic is consistent, that it will never produce a contradiction. He basically said, we need to know that this machine will never break.
And then Kurt Gödel walks into the room and smashes the machine.
He really did. In 1931, Gödel published his incompleteness theorems. This was a bombshell.
Okay.
He proved that in any complex mathematical system, there will always be statements that are true but unprovable. And worse, much worse, he proved that a system cannot demonstrate its own consistency.
So math cannot prove that math works.
Not from the inside, no. You have to step outside the system to prove it, but then you're in a new system and you have to step outside that one.
It's turtles all the way down.
Exactly. The story even mentions another guy, Gerhard Gentzen, who managed to prove consistency later, but he had to use something called transfinite induction.
Which the text describes as proving the obvious by assuming the doubtful.
That doesn't sound very reassuring, does it?
Not at all.
It's not. It's like checking if a bridge is safe by driving a tank over it. If it holds, great. If it doesn't, well. Renee is living in the wreckage of that history. She thought she was safe, and she fell through the floor.
Okay, so Renee's world, the world of logic, has collapsed. 1 = 2. Now we have to look at the other timeline. Her husband, Carl.
Carl, the biologist. He's an experimentalist. He deals with messy, real-world living things, not abstract numbers.
And on the surface, he is the good guy, the supportive spouse.
He really seems like it. He's visiting her in the psych ward every day. He's bringing the paperwork. He's polite to the doctors.
But we get access to his internal monologue, and it is dark.
Very dark. He describes the caretaking as sheer, tedious rote. He's doing the motions, smiling, nodding, signing forms, but the engine is off.
And there's a backstory here that explains why he feels so qualified to help her. Carl isn't a stranger to this ward.
No, he attempted suicide 20 years ago when he was a grad student. He was saved by a woman named Laura. And this is crucial. Laura taught him what he thinks is empathy.
Right. He makes a really specific distinction in the text between sympathy and empathy. Let's unpack that.
To Carl, sympathy is just feeling bad for someone, like, oh, that sucks for you. It's distant.
Okay.
Empathy, in his mind, is resonance. It's saying, I know exactly how you feel because I have felt it too. Because he has stood on that ledge, he believes he is the only one who can truly understand Renee.
He thinks his past trauma is a credential, like a PhD in depression.
Exactly. He compares himself to a friend, Marlene, whom he talked down from suicidal thoughts. He thinks he's an expert on pain.
But the story slowly just dismantles this arrogance. He thinks he knows what she's feeling, but he has no idea why she's feeling it.
And there's this painful scene where that disconnect just explodes. Carl tries to take Renee on a vacation.
To the Biltmore.
Yeah. Let's just get away, relax, take your mind off it.
Which is the worst possible thing to say to a mathematician facing an existential crisis.
It's such a husband thing to say, though, isn't it? Let's just relax.
Totally. But Renee loses it. She tries to explain that you can't take your mind off an a priori truth. It's not a bad mood. It's a fact about the universe.
She says it's everywhere. She looks at the room number, she looks at the clock. If 1 equals 2, then the time is meaningless, the room number is meaningless, there is no escape.
And Carl tries to pivot to physics. He says, well, look at quantum mechanics. That didn't make sense intuitively, but we accepted the evidence.
Which seems like a logical argument, right? In science, if the evidence contradicts your intuition, you throw out your intuition.
So why doesn't it work for her?
Because math isn't physics. Physics is about measuring the world. If the measurements say light is a particle in a wave, you accept it.
Okay.
But math is about intuition. It's about how the mind organizes reality. Renee says she can no longer hold the concept of 1 and 2 as distinct things in her mind. It's not about evidence. It's about the mental machinery breaking down.
And Carl just snaps. He looks at her, smart, successful, tenured, and he thinks, why are you doing this? It's just a math problem.
And that is the moment his empathy fails. He realizes that for Renee, the intellectual is the emotional. He separates them, she doesn't. He can't reach her because he doesn't respect the cause of her pain.
He thinks she's making a fuss over nothing.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the climax, where the story merges these two collapses. We have Renee working on her proof, physically writing out these strings of symbols.
It's a very visual description. She starts with complex strings and reduces them, line by line, grinding them down until they become identical.
Proving that two distinct things are actually the same.
And while she's doing that, Carl is looking at his marriage and doing the exact same reduction.
It's devastating. He looks at his love for her. He looks at his empathy. And he realizes it's all just performance. He calls his support a forgivable sin.
That phrase stuck with me, a forgivable sin.
It's such a specific way to frame it.
He means he is staying out of duty, not love. He is staying because he remembers being the one who needed help, and he doesn't want to be the guy who leaves. But the love.
Oh, love is zeroed out.
Gone.
So just as Renee proves 1 equals 2, that distinct numbers are meaningless, Carl realizes that husband and stranger have collapsed into the same thing.
The distinction is gone. The relationship is formally valid. He's there, he's married, he's helping, but it's empty. It's undefined, just like division by 0.
And the resolution hits in the kitchen. It's such a mundane setting. Carl is stringing snow peas for dinner.
And Renee comes in, and she's actually softer. She's apologetic.
Yeah, this is the tragedy. She starts thanking him. She tells him, I know I've been difficult, but I'm so glad you're here.
She thinks they are on the same team.
She thinks his past suicide attempt connects them.
She says she feels a theological atheism. She is describing the sensation of a core belief evaporating. And in that moment, Carl realizes, I do know exactly what she means.
But not about math.
No. He is feeling theological atheism about them. He used to believe in their marriage implicitly. It was his axiom. And now he looks at her and feels nothing.
So the empathy that was supposed to save them is actually the thing that confirms it's over.
The text says this was an empathy that separated rather than united them. That hits hard.
It does. They are experiencing the exact same emotion, total disillusionment, but the subject of that emotion pushes them to opposite sides of the universe.
She is mourning reality. He is mourning her.
There's a little section header right at the end. Equation 9a equals 9b.
It's the perfect symbol. You have one side of the equation 9a and the other 9b. They are equal in value. They are balanced, but they are separate terms. They're not one unit.
They're two people alone in the same room, feeling the exact same despair, but unable to share it.
Yeah.
It really forces you to question how much of our lives runs on blind faith. We assume one is one. We assume love is love. But Chiang seems to be saying that if you poke at anything hard enough, logic or romance, it falls apart.
It goes back to a quote from Einstein that shows up in section 9. He said, insofar as the propositions of mathematics give an account of reality, they are not certain. And insofar as they are certain, they do not describe reality.
That is dense. Break that down for us. What is Einstein actually saying there?
He's saying there is a trade-off. You can have a perfect, logical, certain system like pure math, but it won't perfectly match the messy real world. Or you can deal with the messy real world, but you have to give up on being 100% certain about anything.
You can't have both.
You can have both. Renee wanted certainty in reality, and it destroyed her mind. Carl wanted certainty in his emotions. He wanted to know he was a good, empathetic husband, and it failed him.
So where does that leave us? Are we just doomed to uncertainty?
I think the story is a warning against the demand for absolute proof. Whether you are looking at the universe or your partner, if you demand a logical perfection, you're going to find a contradiction. We have to live in the gray area.
Maybe the only way to survive is to be okay with the undefined. To accept that sometimes 1 + 1 feels like 3, and you just have to roll with it.
Or at least recognize that when the math stops working, it's not an error to be fixed. It's just the human condition. We're all walking around with proofs that don't quite balance.
Division by Zero by Ted Chiang. A short story that manages to break your heart and your calculator at the same time.
Highly recommended reading, if you feel stable enough for it.
Exactly. To you listening, think about the things you consider absolute truths in your life. The things you think are as solid as 1 = 1. If one of them turned out to be false tomorrow, would you be able to handle the undefined? Or would you crumble?
That's the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.